Why, hello there, and welcome to the Wild West podcast. My name is Richie Ritchie of the MHRT Network, and I'm only slightly dizzy with Jack spinning around with his phone there in his backyard. Over here on my left, you can catch the real Alex Givens over there on Arrowhead Addict, writing all of them written words. Good stuff over there by Alex. And you also have the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast. You can catch him and Coach Defense on coming up soon. You got to give me the deets, please, at some point. Down below
here in 3 weeks.
3 weeks? Okay.
Yeah, and we actually just dropped an announcement today. We're doing a league for the show that we're going to implement into the show.
Like it.
No buy-in, but winner will get $500. So,
cool.
check out social media. I know we dropped something on that today, but if you're interested, get at me or Coach, and best of luck to you.
I will be reaching out shortly.
I will as well.
And then we got Robert here, which is in dire need of a starting quarterback, as well as stop the bleeding. And a new foot would be good too at some point.
I'll donate mine. Can I give him my foot? Happily.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be a regression.
Yeah.
Give him this elite athlete Herbert's foot for yours. I just
listen,
saying, bro.
Herbert says no thanks. I'll take my injured foot because at least I'm more healthy.
I'm the youngest one out of this bunch. Thank you very much.
I know.
That's
Then we got down there in the bottom right corner, Mr. Jack Hanna, representing his Las Vegas Raiders, which is going to be fantastic, actually, to have that information, because we had one heck of an interesting preseason game one last week with a whole bunch of interesting things taking place, and we're going to get right into it with all of you. Let's start off actually with Jack, who decided to not show up last week. It's okay. We're not going to hold that against you, per se. But want to hear your thoughts on your team and how you did and what you thought, highs and lows. Let's start with the highs.
All right. Hey, salute all the Wild West fans. Salute Raider Nation. Yeah, sorry I couldn't make it last week. I had real life stuff going on, so I couldn't be here. But that was an exciting game, and it is just so awesome. I'm sure everybody that's watching the show and you guys that it's kicked off. Football's here. We're actually seeing football.
Yes.
It feels like it's been forever. And it was it was like a tale of two halves, for the Raiders versus Minnesota. It was, the first and second strings looked great. Third and fourth strings, I'm not so happy about that. But it didn't answer any questions in reality. So, O'Connell started off on his 4-yard line, drove it all the way down to the 3-yard line of the opposite team. He went 7 for 9 for 76 yards. And on that third down play, I'm sorry, Pete was a turnstile, gave up a sack, and two receivers ran into each other practically. So it wasn't Aiden O'Connell's fault, but he was accurate. He stepped up in the pocket. The pocket was pretty darn clean. And then, when Minshew came in afterwards, he went 6 for 12, 117 yards and a touchdown. And he looked pretty good too. I would like to see a little bit better in accuracy, but he extended plays. So that left, AP with a tough decision to really what it wants to do. And all the word is, on the town is that he's waiting until after this Cowboys game and to make a decision on who is going to be a starter. And we'll see.
Mustaches.
Yeah, it's a battle of the mustache, that's for sure. But who knows? I mean, I can see it even if they both play like they did. I can see it's going another game before he makes a decision. So it's going to be a really fun, time and watching it go play against the Cowboys. That's who their next opponent is, and see who really steps up, because it's really coming down to this. So these guys probably feeling a little bit of pressure and making it work. But again, the first half, 20-7 Raiders. In the second half, the Raiders, they gave it up and they lost the game, 24-23 on a, last second field goal. And I can tell you, it's like the backups, Brown didn't show anything. He was like 1 of 3 from 30 some odd yards, 3 sacks.
Did not help himself out at all.
at all. It got so bad that the Raiders signed Nathan Peterman, which was an old Raider guy that's coming back. So
I have great memories versus Nathan.
Wait a minute.
I bet a lot of people did for the 2 times he played.
Six.
Sorry. Oh, my bad. I missed by one.
I remember when the Raiders were on Hard Knocks and Gruden would just be like, Nate, like just constantly. That's all you hear him saying. Like, it's like rip it into him.
Yeah, he's not great.
But hey, Gruden was a Nathan Peterman guy though, so I got to say that for him. But yeah, they brought him back. He played for the Bears for a couple years, so I think they did that because he's familiar with Gespy's system. So it's not going to take him as long to learn the system.
Is this your plan for the number 1 pick?
No.
Oh, okay, sorry, I had to ask.
This is for your 3rd and 4th string guys. So I would like to see Bradley get a little play next week. And, because again, I'm sorry, Brown just had to go down. And he did 3 times. So,
well, I'm going to push back a little bit on Ed's comment here. Ed, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but every team in preseason is vanilla. It's just a straight fact.
Nobody's trying to show anything.
No
on
one, like,
right now.
Nope.
You are intentionally trying to hold back and not show your hand in terms of all the details. Yeah. You're trying to put a concept out there that loosely resembles what you're likely going to be doing during the regular season, but isn't really it anyway, just to see how the guys do.
Not to mention, it's like, guys that are just fighting for a spot on the team.
Roster spot. Yeah.
That's a yes and no. That's a yes and no, because you gotta be fair in what we saw from most teams. Like the ones actually played a reasonable amount in that first preseason game. I can't speak for the Chiefs. The Chiefs, unfortunately, was the only game I didn't watch a little bit of. I saw a little bit of the Chargers, a little bit of the Raiders, all the Broncos. I wasn't able to catch the Chiefs game, but for the Chargers and for the Raiders, and certainly for my Denver Broncos, you saw a good, healthy dose of the starters in for that game.
And it is totally strictly vanilla, because the Raiders were like running a 4-3, and they don't really run a 4-3.
Who you calling?
They run a 4-2-5 is their main set. So definitely keeping it vanilla on that. That's for sure. But, what I saw, from what I did see, because I couldn't catch the game, which is crazy, they did the NFL Network. I'm on the West Coast in California, and you would think that they would have played the Raider game out here, but no. They did the replay of the Jets. Was it Jets-Bill game? What the hell's that? I mean, Raiders own California, so
NFL Plus
made no sense. But what my takeaways, again, the tale of 2 halves. But the one thing that I was really disappointed with in the way the Raiders played, it was the run defense. I mean, they gave up for the game an average of 6.5 yards per play at 140 yards. And that's from the starters to the backups. They need to figure out and plug those holes, because that's purely unacceptable. Purely unacceptable.
That'll lose you games.
That'll lose you games. That's for sure. Yeah. You're giving up 6.5 yards. Who needs to throw?
Yeah.
And if you make a team where you can run, and that's always been the philosophy of football. If you can run on a team, then just keep doing it. And they did, and they look good.
It literally breaks their soul, because what I think I've said this before in previous shows, but I'll say it again because I think it's true. And that's the fact that when you're able to run or impose the run game, I think is the probably better way of putting it, on another team, the other team is trying to actually stop you. Like that. That's it's not like they're just saying, "Hey, go." And so what that basically means is you are imposing your will on another team, because the entirety of the run game is effectively your offensive line moving out of the way the other team's defensive line in order to allow that run to work. And Alex knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, literally, if you can just average like 3 yards a carry, you, in theory, don't need to do anything else.
It kind of felt like they were matadors, Hey, let's just stand aside and let you go by. So, that was probably one of the most disappointing, pieces of the game. It's just because again,
How long do starters
Raiders-
play for, though?
not that long. From what I understand, again, I couldn't see the game, so it's like on the Maxes and
I got blacked out here from the game on NFL Network, and I'm like, how?
Well-
I pay all this money for this access, and you're telling me I can't watch it.
wow.
Watch it online through just Chiefs.com.
I think I saw some post or something that's like to watch every game this year in the NFL with all the subscription packages you need to
Like
get, everything like that.
$800.
It's like $800 to watch every single game.
Stupid.
It
Yeah,
is.
because there's going to be like 4 on Netflix,
Yep.
Peacock, like
Amazon Prime has
It's ridiculous, dude.
It is.
Not to get off topic, but I
No.
feel you on not being able to conveniently watch your team's game. Like, it's stupid. And I called the NFL Network. I'm like, what the hell's the deal here? They're like, well, it's just for the preseason. I'm like, I hope so.
Yeah.
Go ahead and bookmark my account if I'm calling in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'll just go back to stealing it off of Reddit like I used to do.
Sportstream.com.
Like the real American.
Yeah, I know you must have what is it called, the end zone or the red zone?
Yeah.
Watch all your fantasy players.
Well, just not, yeah. Well, yeah, you have to. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm in it for 7 hours of commercial-free football.
Yeah.
Kenna.
So I'm just looking for some improvement. And again, not being matadors and just lifting up the cape and letting these guys run by. I want to definitely see some improvement against the Cowgirls. Couple of news notes. Devontae Adams had his child, so again, that's why he wasn't at the game. He has a son now, so he's coming back. And Trey Tucker, 2 catches. Was it 73 yards on 2 catches? And I guess he had LASIK, so I guess his vision's improved. I've had LASIK.
Dynasty team, dude. Woo-hoo.
Here we go again with the Dynasty League.
Well, he's looking good. So I will say that he's been looking good this preseason, and he's showing it up in the game. So I'm pretty happy about that. So I got to give some props to Mark Davis. This was something I wanted to start off with, but I kind of forgot about it. It's right here. This is going to be on all the Raiders helmets this next year. I don't know if it's going to be for life or just one season. And again, like my first show with you guys was, doing the thing for Jim Otto. They're going to honor him. He's that type of player. So they got on one side of the helmet, they have Al Davis. On the other side, now they're going to have Jim Otto. So I'm glad that the Raiders are doing something, going a little bit above and beyond to recognize the greatness of one of the greatest players who've ever played this game. No, I didn't say Mark Davis ever played.
And besides, his weight at least has a 3 in front of those 2 zeros.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. At this age, absolutely. Might be able to go out there and play a little bit of guard, maybe.
No. I said Mark Davis. His weight at least has a 3 in front of those 2 zeros, right? So, but I think that's amazing that there's a staple player that most of our franchises have had, and there's no denying. Like, this isn't the time to, throw on your, opponent hat and start, cracking jokes per se. Although I'm probably going to do it anyway. But he is that guy for the Raiders. He is certainly at least that one guy, and there's probably kind of like a B, C, and D that would follow Otto behind him. And so I think it's important that you elevate the players within your franchise that has kind of made your franchise what they are today. And I think it's important to honor those players in the right way. And I think that as opponents, we all enjoy football. Like, that's kind of why you're here on a roundtable podcast, is that we all are football fans as well as fans of our own team. So I think it's important that we recognize other players, even if they were opponents, that were great at what they did. And Otto was he fit that mold.
Absolutely. I mean, he's my favorite player. This is the only jersey I own. If for me, it's the greatest team, and he's the greatest player. So, it's kind of hard to want to go out and buy a different jersey when I don't feel like hardly no one measures up to him. So that's the whole point of only owning one jersey, where guys will own hundreds. And I don't roll like that. But I do have something that's kind of funny. So one of our running backs, he's rated. He's the number fourth running back on the team, is Labe.
Yeah,
he got a he got a new nickname. So I guess Max named him Cheddar Bob. So if you guys ever seen the movie from 8 Mile,
Yep.
so he's Cheddar Bob now. So
That's amazing.
it's been so long since I saw the movie. I'm like, who in the hell is Cheddar Bob? But I guess he's cheddar, he's money. But I don't know. The guy shot himself in the leg, so like Plaxico Burress.
I was gonna say we should name him Plaxico.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing,
So he's like Aqib Talib who shot himself in the foot.
Yep.
Yeah, surprisingly or non-surprisingly, there's a lot of athletes that I think have shot themselves.
It's pretty sad, actually.
It is. I mean, hell, we just rattled off 4 guys that have shot themselves. I'm just not even thinking about it that hard.
Well, and here's another one with Plaxico Burress. Who was the one to help him out of the club? It was AP.
Oh,
So
Damn.
who knows?
Interesting.
yeah, it was an interesting one. So that's kind of been the update, with the Raiders. And again, let's just see. Again, this is probably going to be the biggest thing, and I'm looking forward. It's just that quarterback competition to see if one of these guys stand out, and we actually finally make the call. And who's going to start getting, instead of splitting reps, who's going to get all the first team reps? And I don't know how they're going to do it because there's been nothing on social media. Because Aiden O'Connell started, and then Minshew came in. I'm just wondering, they've been flip-flopping in practice. So I'm curious if they're going to flip-flop for this game, just to see.
Well, you would think that what you're probably going to see, and this is me projecting for the game, and I think it's the right thing to do given the play that I saw of Minshew, is you should be flipping Minshew and AOC. AOC played well, but he didn't pop. And the one guy that said he wanted a quarterback to pop and show some it factor things was AP in his pressers. He had 2 separate pressers where he said, I want some guy to come and take the job and say, hey, right? Like that was his thing in the presser was he wanted a guy to win it, if you will. And I don't think AOC won it. In fact, if anything, I think he kind of gave ground to Minshew in that game because Minshew made some plays, he also made some mistakes. But at the end of the day, the mistakes were nowhere near like the negative plays that he had, nowhere near outshined or were negative enough that it negated the positive ones. And the positive ones were so good that it really put you guys in that game, like for sure. And so I think that you'd be doing yourselves a disservice to your club to not start Minshew and then see, was last week a fluke or was last week what you can expect from Minshew? And are you going to see even better results when he basically starts with the one? One?
Just buy into the mania, dude.
Yeah.
Come on. Uncle Rico.
I mean, he's also
Uncle Rico, mustache mania. It's like, well, they're both, the same.
Time to be in the hot tub with your soulmate, man.
They should have a competition. Who can grow the biggest mustache over the year?
Oh, my money's on Minshew.
Say, all right, boys, you want to start? I need one of you to look like Raleigh Fingers. Go.
Now, I'm not going to lie. If Minshew wins the competition, I need to see Gorilla Rilla with the Minshew mustache on the gorilla face.
Oh, like
make a blonde.
just like the like I want to see
like handlebar. Or you want to go like all the way?
No,
yeah, okay.
no, the full handlebar.
The full man. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I need to see that. That's important.
That's awesome.
Because that'll make TV for sure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We're gonna have the side by side pictures comparing the two.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'd love to see the jean jacket over top.
Just
from
to
Gorilla
top it
Rilla.
off.
Oh yeah. 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 Like that'd be great. Like that would literally be classic. But moving on to moving on to just two things that you did not like that you saw in that game, aside from what you've already said. I'm counting your concerns, we'll say, with the back portion of your roster filling in.
Well, again, I couldn't watch the game, so again, I've watched what I could on other people's shows. They put on tape. The things again, Pete was kind of a disappointment. Again, he was kind of a turnstile. On that third down play, and that kind of he makes me nervous. The other thing I would say, probably again, it's just the run defense. I mean, not just one player; it was everybody. And again, what you brought up is if you can't stop the run, you're not going to win. But individual player wise, it's got to be Pete. I was kind of hoping the Raiders would have done more with Lobby. They didn't really do that much with him. I think he had three rushes for like 8 or 9 yards and one catch for 16. So felt like they didn't give him enough opportunity. But there wasn't a ton of negative because there's a lot of young guys out there, and I didn't get to see a lot of the stuff in the third or fourth quarter. So I can't comment on that part.
Sure. Ed, you're correct. Although the guys that you're referring to, these are the guys that end up being like Alex Singleton for my Denver Broncos, or some of these other guys like Kurt Warner, who in days of old would kind of end up, packing groceries and then gets plucked out as a test and all of a sudden now becomes a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like these guys here at the bottom end and bottom tier of these rosters, this is them showing out for practice squad tryouts and for the feeder leagues to get picked up by teams so that they can further develop and prove themselves. And make no mistake, we are starting to see the churn this season in particular of those feeder leagues and the back end of those rosters and having some of those guys work
Look
out.
at the Chargers.
Yeah.
Well, I have a question to the Raider fans out there, since I couldn't watch the game. So I said what made me disappointed. What was it made that you guys who actually were able to see the game, what made you disappointed with a certain player? Post it in chat.
I love it.
Chat.
Dust that and toss that into the chat, and we'll pull up your comments as they come up and discuss. Jack, to your point, the magic number that Alex was hinting at before isn't necessarily running for 3 yards. Actually, the magic number is 4, because if you can rush for an average of 4 yards a carry, you just require 3 downs of straight runs, and you end up with just over a first down every play. You will visibly watch the defense of the opposing team, just like their whole demeanor changes, their shoulders start slouching, and it really does. It's like an epic change of just everything in the game. If you can do that for 2 to 3 drives successively, that's really where momentum is just it's done.
Yeah, Anthony Estrada, you're right. Brown, I guess you could say him. Probably more than anybody almost, because the Raiders don't trust him, and they went out and signed another quarterback looking to, replace him.
That third string guy almost always in today's NFL lands on your practice squad. If you can retain him. So you want the dude to show that he can at least play or develop, because you want to stash them on the practice
that emergency spot now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that guy doesn't cut it, of course you're going to be shopping in aisle 2 for someone else.
What do you have in the back?
You're going to the bargain basement right now.
Hey, can you check the overstock over there? We need someone new.
It's like when you got shoes. Like, we're all out. Did you look in the back?
Yeah.
Come on.
It's like the discount rack. It's like everything's like 20% off.
This guy can't throw. Look in the back.
Yeah.
Look for those foot supports.
Did you check the store
Scholes.
next door? Did you check the store next door? We might be able to find a pair there. But that's exactly what we're talking about now. Is that third quarterback is because we're seeing so many injuries like Herbert and others. And others.
Man,
that was like a cut passing in the yard right there. He's like, hey.
Dude, I was like driving by in the car with just a middle finger out, like, damn, what did I do to you?
It's true though. When you look at these injuries that are occurring to some of these quarterbacks, Herbert's one. JJ McCarthy, we just saw with a big time injury that he's now going to be out for the season as a result. I mean,
pause on that part with McCarthy, since it was the Raider game. I did follow up on that one. So it's one of two different surgeries. Either they go in there and they trim. It depends on how much damage done. If they just trim a little bit of the cartilage, he's out like 4 to 6 weeks. If it's where they have to completely repair it, then he's done for the year. It just depends on how much damage was done.
No, they've already confirmed it.
Yeah, they confirmed.
Oh, they did.
He's undergoing a full meniscus repair.
He's going through a full one. Okay.
Yeah. And they specifically stated, Jack, just for the benefit of you and everyone else that may not have read up on it prior to the show, the decision was made to not go under the trim, which is what you're referring to, because the fear was that he would further injure his meniscus throughout the season. And for a young player, their goal with him is long-term, not short-term. It derails their future, right?
Yeah, and that just makes the second half look even worse. A guy's got a torn meniscus and did what he did. So he ended up looking pretty good in the second half. So
right.
Oh, that just makes it even worse.
See how many teams moving forward with rookie QBs play him a lot.
Well, I just saw something earlier today too that was like McCarthy's the first QB in the modern era to miss his entire rookie season off an injury. So that's just like, I mean, at least every other rookie has at least played in one regular season game. This dude couldn't even make it there, and that's just with somebody you took in the first round. This is kind of like going back to the convo we had a week or two ago, Rich, talking about when's the right time? Should a quarterback sit? Should a quarterback play right away? Now this goes right back into that whole thing. Well, it's like now he's like forced to sit essentially, and you're going to lose a year of what I assume they were obviously going to try to start him this year. So I mean, it's tough, and I'm sure nobody's sicker than Justin Jefferson right now.
It's the year of Darnold.
But the goal was not to start him right away. The goal was to let him learn and let Sam Darnold start.
Yeah, I also think the other piece with JJ McCarthy though is I do start to question so his injury and what occurred there. They did an entire repair on the meniscus, which means he's going to be out between 4 to 6 months based on the surgery they did. The question that I would then have is, how do you miss that? Because you don't end up with a meniscus that badly hurt and damaged, generally speaking, in a very brief period of time. That injury typically occurs, over a small period of time or over a period of time, which means that he likely had some challenges or issues coming out the draft and also probably during camp, etc. So how did they miss it? Was it intentional negligence, or did he have such a serious issue during the Raiders game that he took what once was a minor nuisance and it got converted and turned into a major problem? I'm more inclined to think that this was the former rather than the latter.
My thing with it being the former, though, is if they didn't catch it, or sorry, if they did see something, and you're saying they just chose to overlook it, just chose to say, well, if that's the case, then the Vikings
wasn't he injured coming out of the national championship?
Yeah,
I feel like he was.
Do you not like the medical crap that these?
I mean, think about how many people have been taken way later in the draft because of some underlying medical. I mean, Trey Smith, on the Chiefs, was like supposed to be second, third round pick, and they got him the 6th round because of a heart issue.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they make sure they cross their T's, dot their I's on that stuff before they invest in someone.
Right, but you're talking about a franchise quarterback likely is what they're banking on here with JJ McCarthy coming off the championship. So your mental math on this as a GM and as a team is just a little bit different than basically any other position on the team.
They probably thought they could take the varsity blues approach and just stab them with a needle every Sunday. Call it good.
The Harbaugh approach.
Well, I also think that their plan was basically what Jack said too, which was, Darnold plays for a little bit. Maybe they try to sneak him over to, the quick repair route kind of right after the first preseason game, bring him back quietly after just saying, oh, we're resting him because we were very comfortable with how he played, the whole, that whole crap. And then all of a sudden, bada bing, bada boom, we're talking about the dude coming back and then starting by like week 4 or 5. And this obviously completely derailed that.
I think
Karma, right? So Carlos, I forgot what JJ McCarthy said, about the Raiders before. Go ahead and post that in the chat because you know what? That's karma, bro.
What'd he say?
Oh, JJ was talking ish about the Raiders.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was, but I remember him saying something. So, they're chatting it right now up and saying, yep. That's what you do. That's what you get when you start talking crap.
Yeah, Rick, I've heard the same thing. I've never had meniscus issues, knock on wood. But I assume that the meniscus stuff.
Appreciate it, Ed.
I assume the meniscus stuff is very similar to bones and whatnot, that there's the physical component of it, but then there's also the mental component of it too, where you just kind of, that there was a problem there, and part of your injury or recovery is getting over the mental element of that injury as much as the physical, where your body's probably fine, but your brain is saying, no, you just hurt that thing, remember?
It's still hurting, actually.
Yeah.
It's true, though.
It's really just it's getting the range of motion back. Like when I tore my ACL, it took 5 months before I could even like just feel comfortable moving it like you do right now, just like back and forth. And that's the biggest hurdle. I mean, on top of the mental, like just not being worried about it.
Yeah, trying to overcompensate.
Yeah. Well, it also feels it gets so stiff after the healing process, no matter what injury you're coming off of, that part of the mental element of it is that when you're stretching, it feels like you're going to almost break or re-injure it as a result of the stiffness, right? So
the first 3 weeks, I had to go to our athletic trainer and I would just pop 2 hydrocodones and sit there while they just slowly push my knee up to a full bend and bring it back. And I just be biting the towel like, holy shit, this sucks.
Yeah,
that was a good time.
Yeah.
It was a good time.
Sounds fun.
Yeah.
Glad it was you and not me.
Yeah, right.
I didn't take a single painkiller for my leg.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you, dude?
We got a badass over here. Damn.
No shame, dude. No shame in me taking them.
No, I just refuse.
Popping them like candy.
Yeah, I refuse.
I could now that I think about it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. So you had the Raiders. So let's we're going to jump over to my Denver Broncos and go into since there's been a few questions and comments made here already about players, and obviously Bo Nix is going to be a big topic of conversation given some of my comments earlier and how he played, which if you're paying attention to the show and want to be actually honest, I never said he wasn't going to play well. I just said I don't think we should start him. Despite what I saw on the field in the preseason game, my comments remain the same. I think that he played very well, extended plays, exactly as we saw with Minshew with the Las Vegas Raiders, where we saw Bo being able to extend plays, run with the ball, et cetera, et cetera. However, I do think it's important that Broncos fans, and for the AFC West fans that are not as familiar with the Broncos in terms of like little nuances on the team and all that kind of stuff, pay attention to those small details. For example, on that really great Cortland Sutton sideline throw, Bo Nix missed a completely, as in like gaping wide open guy across the middle. Like, can't miss him, front and center. What are you doing? And he could have led him in stride, and that would have turned into potentially a larger gain with the crosser across the middle of the field. Nick scrambled a little bit early, didn't make that throw. And I mean, he completed it. He extended the downs. He got a new set of downs. He did all the things. This is not like a lambasting of Nick's, but you can't rely on making a leaning Cortland Sutton sideline catch on every play like that. It is just not, it's not in the cards. Ain't going to happen. So you need to go through your progressions properly. You need to be able to catch guys in stride, and you need to be able to make those throws the right way. The great quarterbacks make those throws across the middle because they can kind of see the play develop. And that's exactly what I was saying. And one of the reasons why I believe Bo Nix should sit at least for the first block of the season, because once you start him, you can't bench him. Like you will absolutely kill his development as a quarterback, because you're going to, you're going to set him so far back. I don't think it'll work. So I think you're better off starting either. And this is now where the debate is that you're starting to see the media come out and say some things about Wilson that I was saying in the early stage of this show, which is Wilson could well start for our Denver Broncos coming this season. That's Zach Wilson, by the way. And good Lord, I don't want to hear the name Russell Wilson again. And because he looked real solid in the latter part of that game against the 3s and the 4s, as he should have. Now you need to start seeing what he looks like against better competition again with the Denver Broncos in our offense.
You know me, Rich. I'm going to go once again complete opposite way. You got to start him now. There's no reason to go back now. You saw him have poise out there. You saw him have command. You saw him have all the things that you're looking for in a rookie QB. Let's be honest. Like, yeah, he missed a throw here or there, made a couple mistakes. He's going to learn. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and say you need to start Nick right away and he's going to be MVP caliber. But I feel like those mistakes that he learns throughout, or that he will commit as the season goes, and he, with great coaching and assuming he's got the right head on his shoulders, and he learns from those mistakes, then that's what you want, because you're never going to get better experience than playing in the game. And I mean, this, like the preseason, and I mean, didn't we mention that when he moved?
I did. I said a fresh crop of soccer moms there in Colorado for that Zach Wilson.
Oh,
yeah.
Man.
I think every situation's different. It just depends on who's in front of you and where you are as a team. I don't know. It's like I see both sides of the coin. I see, again, with Alex's team, when Patrick Mahomes, they had the right type of quarterback in front of them.
Yeah.
So
they didn't need a QB.
No.
So it's different.
Well, they just got a goat is what they got. But it's like letting him sit was, beneficial for that. Yeah. But at the same time, I see what Robert's saying, when AOC got thrown into the fire, and now looking back at it, a season later, I'm glad he got thrown out there to have that experience.
Yep.
So again, every team and every team's needs are different. So I agree with both you guys on that.
My argument / agreement with you, Jack, on your point you just made is you're right. It does absolutely depend on what you have around you in that room. Like you said, Patrick Mahomes obviously had Alex Smith, who was established. And they
went to the playoffs anyway.
And they went to the playoffs with, yeah, absolutely. The thing with the Broncos, however, is they don't have that veteran
him or
leader
Zach
type.
Wilson.
Yeah, it's
him
chances. Or Zach. And exactly, Zach has been given the chance to start, and he has started in this league many times before. So I don't feel like he's the right person to go to, because what is Nick's really going to learn from him? He hasn't been in the system with the Broncos long. I mean, he's basically quote unquote a rookie like Nick's, because he's learning the
same process.
Exactly. So I feel like with that, and then we can go to the same thing with Jordan Love and Aaron Rodgers. That was the easiest decision ever. Yeah, of course we're going to bench Jordan Love. We have this dude who just won back-to-back MVPs. We're not going to get rid of him anytime soon. So I feel like that given what you have in the QB room, and I know you've said that Stidham would be the person that you start the season with, and try to transition into Bo Nix. I just feel like you got to give Bo Nix the start right away, unless you think that the Broncos are competing for I don't want to say championship, but competing like they're going to be in a playoff spot, like fighting for the playoffs come end of the season. I feel like there's no reason to start Nix. Or I'm sorry, I feel like there's all the reason in the world to start Nix.
Okay, so my reaction to what I've seen with what our offense, I believe, is going to look like, barring a couple offensive line issues that I saw in that game, which scared the bejesus out of me. But McGlinchey's, like, everyone's saying, "Oh my gosh, the offensive line." I'm like, McGlinchey got owned, like, on like a good percentage of plays there, and
he gets owned.
Yeah, it's bad.
Every game.
Like, it's bad. Like, it's bad. It's not just like, oh, everything was okay. It's like, no, like, dude, like, watch the film. Like, go and watch the tape.
Sarah, welcome back.
So,
what's up, Mike?
So here's my take, Robert, on that, which is, I do think the Broncos have the potential of being in that wild card contention this season, and I've maintained that from the beginning of the show. I believe that a lot of teams were very low on the Broncos coming into the season, but they're not paying attention to the types of players that the Broncos are bringing in. They are bringing in gritty players, but cogs in a Sean Payton system. So I kind of see it as a Belichick-esque style building of a roster, which is, you know what you're looking for in the various positions because you have the actual vision for what the offense needs to look like. And you're filling in one or two guys, both starting caliber and then almost starting caliber, in the varying positions throughout the roster. And I believe Sean Payton is slowly building this team back up in that type of an image, which gives you the depth that Jack was concerned about actually on the Raiders, that he saw from the Raiders game. Because what you saw from the Broncos was not a huge drop-off between the ones and the twos. The Broncos had some, pretty stable performance, stable performance between the ones and the twos. And that is a testament to Sean Payton and how he's constructing the roster. So to answer your question, back to the quarterback position, I think if you're looking at it the way that you're proposing, although I think Wilson would be just as suitable as Stidham, in my opinion, a veteran quarterback that has been in the league and started in the league for as many starts as Wilson has will be able to pick up on a playbook, especially after seeing real game action like he did this past preseason, very quickly. And in turn can impart knowledge on a younger guy, because the benefit that Wilson has is he's still young enough to remember what it was like coming out as an early round pick, to be able to tame Bo Nix's nerves and kind of give him some feedback and pointers and that sort of thing, and allow Nix to kind of grow behind him and learn behind him, and even potentially teach him a few things, cheat codes, if you will, to then overcome when he will eventually start. And make no mistake, Nix will eventually start for my Denver Broncos.
So Richie, has Peyton give any indication when he's going to, make known who's going to be the starter?
There's been a few hints that he'll be making some decisions, in somewhat short order. But Sean Payton is a chess player. He doesn't play checkers. And in my opinion, he's going to hold on to that right to the end. And I even predict that what you're going to probably see is not even a tipping of the hand up until the Seahawks game. I think he's going to somehow, mix up the depth chart in some way where he's going to say, well, all the rookies are just sitting at, the second spot or the third spot or the fourth spot on the depth chart because they're rookies. And I'm Sean Payton. And my tutelage, that's just kind of the way, that's the way that my mentor taught me. And if you don't like it, go away. And so I have a funny feeling that even if Payton wants Nix to start, He'll probably give him the reps and stuff with the ones or split the reps with the ones. But I hope that he goes pure old school. And I'm hoping, like fingers crossed, hoping that we see either Wilson or Stidham start for my Denver Broncos, because live game action is not preseason and it's not college football. And once you go Bo Nix as your starter, you can't bench him. You have to just ride out with the results and hope things work out. And it would be a shame to stunt his development by getting a little overzealous needlessly, in my opinion, because you do have two quarterbacks that have clearly proven that they can run the Peyton offense and have success doing it.
But have they?
Stidham came in with Russell Wilson where people were saying that he had a bounce back year, and there was zero difference statistically between him and Russell Wilson. Zero. Now, my opinion of Russell Wilson last year was somewhere between trash and trash. But
I think that was everyone's opinion.
Yeah. Well, not really, because a lot of people.
Oh, well, that's true.
A lot of no, that not at all. A lot of these pundits and everything else were saying, bounce back year, Russell Wilson, look at all the stats and blah, 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 blah. And then all of a sudden he gets cut and they're like, well, I guess, Sean Payton and I guess Russell Wilson may not have been that good, even though like 5 minutes ago they were basically saying he's back, baby. So, I mean, the point here is you can be serviceable and win games with a quarterback, with a coach that can build the team supporting the skill sets of the quarterback that is on the roster. And so long as a guy like Sean Payton knows who his guy is going to be, whether it be Stidham or Wilson, he can really do a tremendous amount with the offensive playbook and scheme to suppress any weaknesses and absolutely shine and put a spotlight on those strengths.
Okay. That's understandable. And I see where you're coming from. I don't know. I just feel like Nix is going to lose out on some valuable reps, especially early in the season when a lot of teams are still kind of, I don't want to say are trying to figure out what they are, but it's the first couple weeks of football. It's now the schemes are coming into play now.
To build momentum.
Yeah, exactly. If he can notch a couple wins under his belt, and I honestly don't know what your schedule looks like the first 4 to 5 weeks of the season, but I mean, it's not great. Okay, I guess in that situation, I could understand you waiting about 2 months or so to throw Nix in if the schedule's brutal to start. But man, I don't know. I feel like I know it's only a preseason game, and I know it's only one preseason game, and we're trying to look at the crumbs and try to make a cake out of it. But I feel like he showed you, at least in that game, like I deserve to be number one on the depth chart over these two guys who have been career backups one career backup and the other was a first round bust.
Bounce around.
Bounce. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know that personal opinion.
This here is it.
Gotta get Nix.
This here is it. So Cool Kev, if I could just give me like 1 minute on this comment here, and I think this will answer exactly what you're going to talk about. What we saw when Bo Nix was on the field was a slightly different offense than when we had Jared Stidham on the field. Mm-hmm. And so Stidham started and Bo Nix came afterwards. There was slightly different route concepts. There was slightly different looks, and there were slightly different play calls when Nix was on the field. So to Cool Kev's point, and this has kind of been my point all along, is if you're going to then tout Nix as the starter, he needs to run the offense the way that Peyton wants to run it, because I believe he ran the offense the way he wanted to run it when Stidham was out on the field. And I'm not convinced that he ran it exactly the way he wanted to do it when Nix was on the field. And the reason I'm saying that is there was far more outlets when Nix was on the field than there was when Stidham was on the field. You saw the running back hang back for that outlet, like escape hatch throw that you want for a quarterback like Russell Wilson or a rookie like Bo Nix, because Bo Nix is better than Russell Wilson, but they still need, because they're learning and Russell Wilson just doesn't have an excuse. He's just declining. They need that outlet throw. They need that quick, oh my gosh, I can't, in Russell Wilson's case, I can't see anything because I'm too short. I need to be able to throw it to a running back. And then in Bo Nix's case, it's I'm processing everything, but I need to get it out so that we can make a play. And that's kind of what I'm getting at when it comes to Bo Nix and why I think he should sit and not start. I am not saying that I dislike Bo Nix. I am not saying that I don't think he's going to start.
Right.
I'm simply saying that he's played, he's going to play, and he's going to spell someone at some point during the season. And that's a good thing. But you don't throw him all the way in with a subpar version of your offense when you could be running, the full deal offense with Wilson and Stidham, perhaps having Bo Nix learn behind them and say, oh, I get that now. Oh, I get that now. And then have him come in week 16 or something and start to kind of do what Mahomes did when he played against the Denver Broncos, where the Chiefs had no business beating my Broncos when Mahomes came into play. Right. But Mahomes was just too darn good, and he won the game anyway. The Chiefs benched almost every single one of their starters. Yeah. Mahomes came in with the backups and some Starbucks down the street and won. So
pretty not wrong.
Yeah. So that's the whole point, right? Is when you have a good starting quarterback who is competent, and I believe Bo is more than competent. I think he's got the football IQ and all of the gifts and talent that you want for a starting caliber quarterback. The question is, can he process fast enough at the NFL level to run the complexity of offense that Sean Payton wants to run successfully? I believe the answer is not yet, but just wait.
Okay. So you don't think it's a how do I say this without trying to sound wrong? You don't think it's like a talent level of play factor in terms of why Nick shouldn't start? You think it's simply just he hasn't had a chance to learn the offense in its entirety yet, and until he does, he should remain as the backup?
No. So that's part of what I'm saying. The other part of what I'm saying is the speed of the game and the complexity of the game at the NFL level is much, 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 much different than at the college level. And there's going to be nuances to the game that he will not know yet. And you need to be very careful with the quarterback position in particular, because the name of their game is processing things quickly. And if you put them out there and force them to over-process, or in Sam Darnold's case, they refer to it as seeing ghosts, you start to have the quarterback then make needless mistakes as a result of putting them in situations that is not good for them. And you get guys like Aiden O'Connell, for example, AOC 4 at the time, now AOC 12, who stepped in and rose to the occasion. Now the question is he in a team, and has the roster been built around him to keep him at the level that he was last year and help elevate him to the next level since he rose to the occasion, as opposed to finding everything overwhelming? My point is, you put such a tremendous amount of draft capital into Bo Nix as your first-round quarterback. Mm-hmm. I believe that he can and will be a very successful starter for my franchise in the Denver Broncos. I really do. I think he's that guy. He's got the right blend of skill sets and tools.
Intangibles.
All the intangibles.
Mm-hmm.
But don't put him in a position where you start hindering or stunting his growth, like that crossing play that I mentioned that he missed versus throwing the out route to Sutton. He'll look at the play, and I'm sure he'll go back and course correct. But the problem is there is about 5 other plays that were very similar.
Right.
You need to give him the time to process and learn. The Chiefs did it with Mahomes. And frankly, the teams that have had the most success, generally speaking, Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love. I'd argue Jordan Love got the benefit of learning behind Aaron Rodgers, whether or not anyone wants to admit it or not. Mahomes and Alex Smith, all of those players have shown that sitting behind competent quarterbacks, and I argue both Stidham and Wilson are competent quarterbacks. They're never going to be great, but I believe Bo Nix can be great. And that's why you have him learn behind competent quarterbacks and then have him elevate. Now, Aaron Rodgers is an exception to that. I actually consider Aaron Rodgers a great quarterback.
Right.
So, right. But the point is that I think that there's a way of doing it. And I think the Broncos have an opportunity to do it the right way with whom they brought in so far. And I hope they don't screw it up. I'm hoping Sean Payton does what I think he's going to do and go old school, because he is, generally speaking, an old school coach that is sprinkling in some new school ideas simply from a health and safety perspective. But when it comes to the pure football side of things, he is definitely an old school dude.
Okay. I agree with you on that, but I will say that where we don't agree, I personally don't believe that Stidham or Wilson are competent quarterbacks. Stidham maybe more so than Zach Wilson, but Zach Wilson definitely not. If there was anybody that you're going to start, it has to be Stidham, because I just don't think Nix is going to learn anything under Wilson.
I disagree.
That he doesn't already possess or will learn just by playing on his own.
Look, move record aside, like ignore the record.
Yeah.
Look at the general stats that Wilson had when he was with his former team.
Mm-hmm.
And look at what he had to work with in order to attain those stats. So they keep on saying that really good quarterbacks typically end up going to a team that knows what to do and how they're doing it. So, for example, look to our man Alex Gibbons over here on the top right of your screen. They drafted Patrick Mahomes by trading up in the first round to acquire him, by trading away 2 picks to jump up into that first round and get their guy for the future. And you have to be an absolute fool to not say that they stole Mahomes with how and where they got him, right?
Oh,
cool.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely.
Now, what did the Chiefs do prior to attaining Patrick Mahomes?
Built basically a complete
Built
roster.
their whole
They
Minus
built a
QB.
complete roster that was basically only void of a quarterback, right?
Right.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what did Zach Wilson's former team have on it that would make you believe that they were a quarterback away from anything?
I mean, not that they were a quarterback away, but I mean,
Well, they believe they were. I mean,
they-
they traded
yeah,
for
I guess
Rodgers,
at
and
the
I
time,
mean, he did have like Pro Bowl caliber players around
and the
him.
defense that was top
Rookie
5,
year
arguably.
on offense and defense, and they drafted 2 offensive linemen, and one of them just happened to turn out to be a bust.
But
Yeah,
like,
Mickey Becton.
to what you're saying, Richie, about the Chiefs, like if the Broncos were going to take that approach of like, let's build up our roster, get our team right before the QB, why would they take a QB in this draft?
I have an answer to that already. It's because they believe that it would take too much draft capital to trade up in next year's draft to get their guy. And I believe that Sean Payton, his number 2 quarterback in this draft, I truly believe this, and it will take a lot to prove me otherwise. Bo Nix was his number 2 quarterback in this year's
I thought he was
draft.
number 1 in his book. Who was number 1?
Caleb Williams.
Williams.
Yeah.
Had to be.
Yeah.
But see that
But at the same time, like the Chiefs didn't they didn't rebuild the way they did in 2 years. I mean, they were picking top 10 for like 8 years.
Yes.
I mean,
yeah, that's true.
You're taking one comparison, but like making it sound like it's a quickly obtainable thing. And so
no,
that's
no, actually, I'm not. In fact, I've never said it was quickly obtainable. My point here is, I think the mental math on this was done, and the mental math is quite clear. And this was the conundrum I was in, even in my draft analysis for this year. And I didn't want us to go quarterback, but as I look back on it, there was a big part of me that was saying, well, you kind of got it right, because the thought process here is Sean Payton had no business winning the number of games he did last season with the roster we had and the play that we had on the field. The fact remains, he did. Okay, now extrapolate that. We have a better roster this year with better players that better fit his system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and which is likely going to yield a better win percentage for the team, which I fully expect. which then means that you're going to have an even tougher go round to jump up into the first round to nab your quarterback of the future. So if the guy you really like, and I mean truly really like, is there at your pick in this year's draft, which by all accounts he was, you pull the trigger. And I think that's why the mental math was what it was this season, which was, if we don't have to move picks to jump up to grab our dude, and we're okay with either Caleb Williams, good luck, or Bo Nix as our number 2 guy, and it's looking like we're going to be able to get our number 2 guy anyways at our position in the draft and not give away draft capital, then you say yes all day long for sure. Imagine if your Chiefs didn't have to trade a darn thing to grab Patrick Mahomes in that draft and just sat there and waited.
That would have been nice. Well, they only moved up. I mean, he wasn't on any team's radar. They moved up like 12.
Well,
I mean, they had to jump in front of the Saints because Sean Payton was going to take it.
Right.
Probably still be at the Saints if that happened.
Oh yeah.
Right. But that's my point though, right? Which is there's an approach to it. And I think that the math and just the way things lined up in the draft this year just kind of moved us in that direction.
But I feel like if Nix is your number 2 guy, and let's put it, for all intents and purposes, he was your number 1 guy because nobody was going to get Caleb. We all knew Caleb was going to the Bears. I'm sure you Sean Payton.
100%.
Yeah. So 100%. If Bo Nix, for all intents and purposes, was your number 1 guy, and you somehow got him with the 12th pick, there's like almost no reason to not start him then, because you're telling me that if the Broncos would have had the 3rd overall pick, they're taking Nix? And at that point, if you take Nix with the 3rd overall pick, he is definitely starting that year. There's no way but see why? If he is your guy, and according to you, he is Peyton's guy.
I'm going to look, this is the one thing you're going to get from me. I am consistent no matter what. I don't give a crap what anyone else has as a contrary opinion to mine. Unless you can present an argument that makes me kind of step back and then reevaluate. No offense. There is nothing you have said that is having me step back and reevaluate my position on this. My position remains the same. Nothing changes. Bo Nix is a fantastic quarterback who still needs some time to completely assimilate to the NFL. And we saw that on film in preseason game 1. That does not mean that he can't get there. Right. That simply just means that I think he needs more time. Patrick Mahomes was the same. And I'm sure if Alex were to go back and rewatch the film in preseason for Mahomes, he would also agree. In fact, I might just do that just for fun, just to go back and look at it, right? Which is like, what did it look like when Mahomes stepped in preseason and stuff? Mm-hmm. So as an example, let's look at JJ McCarthy, and let's use just that as an analogy for this. Mm-hmm. Why force a dude to play hurt if he's going to be your long-term future for your team?
Well,
right?
Yeah.
Right? That makes no sense, right? Zero sense. Now, on the flip side of that, what I'm talking about isn't physical injury. It's potentially mental hindrance on the guy that you have on your team. You're potentially putting him into a box and forcing him to just forever mess up mentally because you've rushed him into something. I'm not equating the two 100%, but they certainly have similar outcomes, which is one dude's not on the field because, maybe he can't walk anymore. And then one dude's not on the field because every time he steps on the field, he thinks the defensive end is going to take his head off.
I don't know, but it's a slippery slope, though, because I feel like you also can mentally hinder him with the media constantly asking why they're not starting, you telling them they're not ready, and then midpoint of the season when you're probably
you never tell them they're not ready.
Well, when you're probably doing bad, if you're making a change, then you're not doing good at the midpoint of the season. Then you're going to say, hey, kid, I know we're in week 7, and I've said you're not good enough, but things are pretty shitty right now. Go fix it. Like, how is that going to be any better of an outcome than putting them in the fire now and
you're
them
still not capturing you're still not
capturing but you're also only viewing one side of the perspective here, like it's the correct one, which is I mean, not accurate, because it could go one of two ways. Like the same thing is like, if I've said if Mahomes went somewhere else and was thrown in, maybe he's not Mahomes today. But at the same time, maybe he goes there and he lights it up the same way. But like, you have to take the risk. And if you're spending a top pick on someone, like, why not do it now when there's not really anyone that's better than him long term for your team?
Yeah. So I just went through a bit of a DM battle with one of the top guys for one of the top podcast groups that represents my Denver Broncos, called Mile High Huddle. And he and I got into this volleyed back and forth discussion that is literally what we're having right now. And my whole point here is, if you're not doing well and you throw the guy into the back end of the season, sure, you run the risk of issues and problems. But at that point there, you've also lowered and dropped expectations of that player at the same time. I also have never, not once, said that your message or branding, if you will, of this new quarterback is he ain't good enough, therefore he's not on the field. Your branding or message is basically, I'm the head coach and I believe in the old school way that we used to do things, which is allowing quarterbacks to learn the ropes from a veteran. And you never say, figure it out or belittle the quarterback. My comments have always been, you basically pump him up as saying he's going to be our future, but I believe in the old school mentality of having him learn from a veteran, learn from the coaching staff, analyze the film, run maybe the meetings and that kind of stuff. Like literally go through kind of the ebbs and flows that you want from what is inevitably the de facto leader on your football team. Like, is there any debate on your team right now who the leader is?
Well, for the Raiders, there might be a little bit, but
but at the same time,
that question wasn't for you. Actually, I would argue I would actually argue that Jack's answer is probably a yes.
Max Crosby. Yeah, that's
right?
true. That's a good.
We're talking quarterback. No.
Yes. I guess, but that branding, Rich, only really works if your team's doing well. That perspective of it has only worked in, really two places, Kansas City and Green Bay. And that's because Kansas City was still making it to the AFC Championship game without Mahomes, and Green Bay had back-to-back MVP winning Aaron Rodgers. Everywhere else, even if you try to sell it that way, it's going to be like, well, this team's 2-6 right now, and they're not starting the guy they drafted 12th overall. Why?
New England Patriots had
Tom
Brady step behind Bledsoe, who stepped in eventually when
but that was different. That was different though. Like he came in because he got hurt. It wasn't we took Brady and they took him in the 6th round. They didn't take him 10th overall and say, "Hey, you're going to learn from Bledsoe." And it was also 2000. The game has changed. But I'm just saying, that way is only presented that way if the team's doing well.
Okay, so here, let me turn that around and say, okay. So from the year 2000 to 2024, this year of 2024, how many quarterbacks that have been thrown into the fire have ended up winning a Super Bowl?
Yeah, but that's like you're putting it in like the upteenth degree. First of all, half of these quarterbacks haven't even played long enough for us to be like, well, they made
Robert,
a Super Bowl.
I will even go as far as lowering my bar.
Playoffs?
How many quarterbacks have made it into the championship round after being directly thrown into the fire? Remember, 32 teams, and there is probably
for sure been a few.
Josh Allen.
So Josh Allen's
Joe
Burrow. Yeah.
Jalen Hurts.
I guess Lamar wasn't thrown.
Lamar?
No, Lamar wasn't thrown in. He sat for half a season. But Jalen Hurts over on the NFC side, Brock Purdy.
He wasn't thrown in. He didn't start.
No, he came in. He was thrown in for injury.
No, but he didn't start. My point is starting.
Okay. So starting game 1.
So you have Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, who both started week 1. So those are fair comments. And yes, they did make it in to that kind of like upper tier of the playoffs. But my point here is, you've listed to me. Pardon me.
Russ.
Right. Yes,
that's true.
Yes.
Cam Newton.
And in fact, Russ and Cam Newton are the only two
Baker
quarterbacks.
Mayfield.
Mayfield, not
No, that was
they did.
divisional.
The Chiefs
That
beat
was
them.
Oh, was that? No,
No,
that was
that was- that
divisional.
was-
That was
that was
divisional. That wasn't to
divisional.
go to the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Never mind.
But the point here is every year there's 4 or 5 teams that draft a quarterback in the first round, and those 4 or 5 teams change. And so we have had a substantive churn over the last even just decade of starting quarterbacks within the majority of the teams in the NFL, and that's inarguable. It's just a fact.
Right,
and of those quarterbacks, very few, if not none, have actually gone on to win the championship, or even lowering that bar, which as a fan you'd be ecstatic with anyway, of making it into the deep run into the playoffs, right? And so my whole point is those quarterbacks, generally speaking, that learn the ropes and I mean subtle nuances of the game of football, generally speaking, that have made it deep into the playoff runs, etc., have had that slight advantage of that additional time of learning, like your Lamar Jacksons, who even Baltimore fans were making comments about when he was coming up for his contract extension of saying, is he really worth it?
Which is
So-
crazy to me because the
Look,
dude won an MVP up until that point.
Look, I
It's
don't.
the 31st pick. It's like we're talking like low level, super high picks. And you know what? That just means your team is not good. And you can't expect it. It's a team sport. But, to give the player the experience. And again, I see both sides of the coin where you're at. But at the same time, you go to season 2, you gain that experience. We're saying like, okay, this kid's going to get ruined because he went out there too soon. And yes, there is a perspective like, yes, get your knowledge, learn behind someone. But again, when you got the Kansas City Chiefs, the Green Bays, you got that luxury. And this is the NFL, which means not for long. So you need to get out there. But you look at all these teams. Look at Peyton Manning. I mean, shoot, what do you go? One in like
Literally
15
threw
or
like
something
25
ridiculous.
interceptions.
The Dallas Cowboys quarterback.
Guys, I have to jump into Peyton Manning one because I was expecting this to eventually crop up. Because I've been salivating, waiting for this to be brought up.
Well, I'm glad I segued for you, Richie.
Yeah, thank you. If your argument is to pick like the absolute extreme outlier and attempt to argue that as the norm, please try to make that case, because man, you were going to lose the argument on the onset, because
But
you
were making the case for Mahomes and Brady. That's like the ultimate, ultimate extreme.
No, those have a proven track record of that approach of working at the NFL level for not 1 year or 2 years, but for decades.
But when they're playing
longevity.
behind an elite QB, when they're learning from an elite
QB,
I won't call Alex Smith elite, but a solid QB.
damn
But Aaron
good
Rodgers
QB.
was certainly elite. Drew Bledsoe was considered elite at the time.
Brett
like-
Favre.
Brett Favre,
Yeah,
and
Brett
Rodgers.
Favre was elite. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, but
Sure.
you're talking about Bo Nix learning from Zach Wilson or Jared Stidham. Like, that is not, that's an apples to oranges comparison of the two.
Sure, I will agree that it's not a perfect one-to-one relationship, but I would also argue that Lamar Jackson has had
Joe Flacco.
Joe Flacco won a Super Bowl,
went,
though.
yeah.
I mean, he played in that playoffs. He played himself into
Okay.
a contract. Like,
Yup.
he balled out in those playoffs.
That's true.
he had a flash. Like, look, a contract season for any player is undefeated, effectively, is what it seems like. But I will concede, as part of the argument here, that Joe Flacco had himself a season. And sorry, you will note that I said a season.
Yeah.
Yep.
A season and playoff run.
Well, sorry, a season and a very short, but successful playoff run.
Yeah.
Every other season thereafter has been meh. And he even came to Denver for a brief period of time, which was comical. And we drafted Drew Lock in the second round, and then Joe Flacco was on record saying it ain't my job to teach anybody.
That makes. I mean,
that's because he left Baltimore from someone they wanted to teach. And he went right into the same situation.
Yeah. So, look, I can completely see the flip side to the coin. What my concern is that at least in my approach, and by the way, I'm not saying that Nick should sit for 3 seasons or something ridiculous.
I'm
like
not
that.
saying that. I'm not
Yeah.
taking what you're saying as that.
Yeah.
But
But what I'm saying is that if you throw him into the fire right now, I think that there is a reasonable risk with what I know to be my Denver Broncos offensive line. Even though all these other Broncos fans are saying, "Oh, it's great, it's great, it's great," the answer is no.
some of them are a little delusional.
They are.
I remember in the draft time, I'd see them making trades for getting a first round pick for Garrett Bowles, and I'm like, I don't know what team you think's going to do that.
Oh, speaking of which, Broncos preseason game 1, we saw the return of Garrett Holds.
Oh, how many flags did he get on this time?
I counted 2, but I'm sure I missed a couple. But it was hilarious that literally our podcast with Yarko of the Bucks. If you haven't seen the James Yarko podcast last week,
Rick.
Yes, I agree, 100%. You will only get agreement on that comment from me for sure. And
so I have a question, Richie. So since you want him to sit, I guess the question I have is how long do you want him to sit?
1 year.
What is your ideal situation for him?
Well, sorry, I'm going to course correct that just a little bit. If this season ends up being where we're kind of wild card-ish or maybe out of contention, then I would argue that the coach kind of pulls Nick aside and basically says, we're putting you in as the starter. You're the future of this team. By the way, there are 0 expectations of the team at this point. Let's just give it our level best and let's ruin everyone else's day.
So week 5.
Pardon me?
I'm just joking. I said week 5.
Listen here, you. So I think that you would do something like that with Knicks, where you remove the additional pressure of being that first round pick, so that you don't potentially put him in a mental challenge. You're trying to avoid the position that we have seen from Sam Darnold and many other quarterbacks that have come into the league and fizzled out and failed. You're trying to avoid that.
I have one more thing to say to it. If you don't think that the weapons or the team around him, I should say, isn't enough for him to start right away, how do you think that same team minus him? Because I think we all can agree that he's probably the best quarterback on the roster.
Bo?
How can we... Bo? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think he has... I won't go as far as calling him the best quarterback on the roster. I think he certainly has the intangibles to quickly become the best quarterback on the roster.
Okay, highest upside. We'll put it like that.
Sure. Yes.
Easily highest upside of any QB on the roster.
Yes.
So if you don't think that the team around him is good enough to compete with him, what makes you think the team will be good enough to stay in contention without him? To contend for a wild card spot, as you say.
So my problem with starting Bo Nix week 1, unless he makes major leaps in very, very short order,
and someone
as in fixing those issues that we saw in preseason game 1, tomorrow, is you're going to have to fundamentally alter the complexity of your offense, which will ultimately put your team at a disadvantage, because you lose what makes Sean Payton's offenses so good, which is very similar to what we saw from the early Sean McVay stuff, which is the same play results in 5 different plays in terms of the look. Mm-hmm. And it makes it very difficult to defend, because you have what looks to be a pass and it becomes a run. You have what looks to become a run and it's actually a deep ball. And you're just sitting there saying, what was that? And you need a quarterback who can operate under center and not fumble the snap like we saw from Bo Nix in preseason game 1, from being able to run under center. It's these little things like that have me extremely concerned. I am not concerned with some of the decision-making stuff, because I think a lot of that can be coached and corrected. It's the you need him to start learning behind someone who has done it before for a little longer than 5 minutes.
I agree with that, and I think I'll just end it with, I would have liked it a lot better if there was literally almost any other veteran in that QB room with him besides Zach Wilson and Jared Stidham. I would be totally on board with what you're saying if you had like a solid vet that had played for, the last 8 years or so and was never considered like the cream of the crop, but everybody looked at him and Alex Smith is like the perfect example, because the dude was just borderline, just like a little bit above average, and played and had enough talent around him and played.
He was great enough.
Yeah.
I will agree with that. Yes.
Little step over and good enough, and not quite like elite, but great enough.
But right there in that middle area. Yeah.
Alex Smith was a persistent playoff quarterback, but you knew full well that he was never going to win you a Super Bowl.
No. And I always think back to what Kelsey said whenever Mahomes was like this. They traded him. He's like, Alex Smith would throw to you when you're open. Mahomes throws you open.
Yes.
That's what they needed. I mean,
that's the definite. Yep, that's the difference between a great QB and a good QB.
Yeah. So that's kind of what my take is, and then just some other kind of quick points on my Denver Broncos in the preseason game, and then we'll throw it over to you there, Alex. We saw some really interesting play from the offensive line. The centers, both first and second string, both played very well. I was quite impressed. I was concerned because Cushenberry Yeah, exactly. I was as far as I'm concerned, bye. And we're good to go. One season doth not equal a massive contract, and I'm happy that we moved on in that regard.
Have fun, Tennessee.
Yep. And
adios, muchachos.
And I have all of the same concerns about the offensive line, because we had mediocre run plays. They were good, but not great. We saw holes, but not great holes opened. We saw the running backs have to really work to get those running yards. We saw the same thing last season. It did not end well. That was not good. Like, it needs to be better. I need to see more from both run blocking and pass blocking. We also saw some holds from our left tackle. That was always a concern of mine, is that if the rules change even just a little bit, that is not going to end well for us. The other thing I would like to say is, for those Broncos fans that thought Alex Singleton was expendable, you are sorely mistaken, and the preseason game should have showed you that. That dude is everywhere. And if you're looking for who Alex Singleton is, the dude's got hair past his shoulders, looks like a hippie, but tackles like a machine. He is legit. Yeah. And I said that from the get-go when we signed him. I've been doing these podcasts on video for long enough that I can't hide from my takes. It's just, they are what they are, and I will wholeheartedly accept them. And he was all like, as soon as we signed him, it's like, that dude is going to show out. And he did. And he has. And he's earned the longevity on my Broncos roster. We also saw Barton, by the way, who I mentioned last podcast and the podcast before.
Oh, whoops, I put the wrong one up.
They play Knicks or don't unless there's no other option.
Well, there's two other options, is my point. And we can debate whether or not they're suitable options or not. I just think that both of them have had starting experience. I think that both of them had some success in the league. And I think Bo Nix is a rookie still in the league that has to prove he can have success. And I also appreciate the argument that you got to be given the opportunity to prove you can have success. But I think that should come a little bit later to ensure that you don't stunt his growth as a potential rookie and your eventual future of the team. And that's just kind of my take. And I'm happy to be wrong. And if I'm proven wrong, fantastic. Because guess what? That means that my team is going to do really well.
Yeah, I hope you're not. I hope you're not proven wrong.
Yeah.
As much as I want to be right, I don't want you to be wrong.
And Richie, I have a question. Since you mentioned like the offensive line wasn't creating the holes, and the running backs kind of struggled. Out of the running backs, then, What'd you see out there? Who'd you like?
Estime looked good. We saw some Jaleel McLaughlin kind of
Told you.
minor flashes. I saw a very similar, Javonte Williams to last season. He's got to really do something for me to change my mind. I am going to say that the one running back that I was shocked with that actually made some mistakes was Samaje Perine.
Yeah.
I actually think that he played himself off the roster.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm on record back just a few weeks ago thinking that he was going to maybe even overtake, number one running back spot, because last season when Williams went down, Perine stepped up and absolutely just killed it for my Denver Broncos. And we saw the complete opposite in this preseason from him, kind of average, mediocre. And I do wonder if this is his cliff, if you will. Running back is such a high collision position that at some point you have to be rare air running back in order to have longevity at that position in the NFL. And we're just seeing that more and more.
Derrick Henry.
I told you about Estime. Told you watch out for him.
No, I've always been high on him. I just thought that it was going to be a shimmy shake in terms of jockeying for position at the running back position, different from what most Broncos fans think. I am slowly coming back to probably somewhere closer to where the pundits and whatnot were projecting the Denver Broncos roster to land, which surprises me. But I mean, I'm not going to be like upset about it or anything. It wasn't a position group where I had a specific guy where I said, see, look, it was just one of those guys. It was one of those positional battles that Perine surprised me last game, and he's going to have one heck of a game, I think, in preseason game 2, epic, in order to make up for his performance last week.
Yeah, that was, I think, one of the most surprising things to me, too, about your Broncos was to see him struggle as hard as he did, because like you said, he really honestly kind of saved the running back position for you guys last season. Like
he was
you said,
legit automatic last year.
Yeah, he was. I'm pretty sure I even picked him up in fantasy at one point because he was doing so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's running back, I think, is the one position where it can be like an instant where you'll see somebody come in, you'll see them play, and you're like, that's the guy. Like it'll just take maybe a game or two of watching, and that's kind of how it was with Eckler when he came in. It was like you could see it, like who the starting running back is, who's that complimentary third down back are they putting in, and when the third down complimentary back is getting those earlier reps, that's when it's like, ooh, it's bad.
Yeah. So that was kind of at that position group where I was kind of interested. The other thing that I did see, and I made some comments about him last week or the week before, was Nate Adkins. He was number 45 for my Denver Broncos. You saw him come out and make some real, he's progressed. I have no other way. Like he has made those leaps forward. And he's also had some comments of Sean Payton as being just that guy that you can simply just count on in the run block game and in the blocking game, and as a kind of a secondary lineman. And he's a lot better at catching the ball than most people think. And so that changes the game a little bit at the tight end position, because there was some jockeying, I thought, more so for position, with Yasmin coming in as a pass catching tight end. You had Dulcich, who's apparently healthy. We'll see if he lasts longer than 10 minutes on the field. And then you have Atkins, and then Troutman, who is just kind of like the, Sean Payton's, if I can get 4 of him, I'm good, kind of thing. And so the question is who fills into what I believe is the inevitable 4th tight end on the roster. I think for my Denver Broncos, we were talking about the kickoff last week, guys, on the show, as well as the week before. I think Sean Payton's math on this is one less safety / cornerback and one more tight end on the roster. So you're going to have a slightly imbalanced offense versus defense, not by much, but just by a little bit, like by that one player differential, because I believe Atkins is probably going to be that guy that tilts the scales because he is a sure tackler. And I also believe that the Denver Broncos wide receiver room will be much different than most Denver Broncos fans believe it will be. Vele, as far as I'm concerned, is a lock for the 53-man roster. A lock. If you want to know who he was in the Denver Broncos game, he was number 81, which is Tim Patrick's old number. I still have to have a discussion with TP Streets on Twitter. I bought his jersey and he changed his number on me. What the hell?
Yeah, Derwin did the same shit to me, man.
Yeah. Toe Tat Timmy, as I call him.
Didn't let you exchange?
Yeah. So Toe Tap Timmy, as I call Tim Patrick, he is got incredible body control when he's up in the air catching the ball. He's able to twist his body in the air and kind of keep his feet in bounds, which is a very unique skill set for a wide receiver, especially for a dude who's like 6'4". So something that is really, really unique. Vele is literally a Tim Patrick, but younger. And so I see my Denver Broncos keeping either trading Cortland Sutton for draft capital and keeping Vele and Tim Patrick, as well as a couple other wide receivers on our roster, or keeping Sutton, Tim Patrick, Vele, and Mims. And then we're going to also see Franklin because he's a Bo Nix guy. So that'll be 5. And then I believe you're going to see a 6th wide receiver. And I believe that guy might surprise many. And Franklin, I think. Not Franklin. The guy we picked up from the Lions will also be a wide receiver on our team.
Oh,
and then we're going to have, and then I think, him, and I think we're going to have a 7th because we have such big bodied wide receivers. I think they're going to also complement that new kickoff rule as well, and that's kind of where my other prediction comes from, is that you want the speed of tackling, and I think that's going to be very important. And because our wideouts are so big, especially Patrick and Vele, you want Patrick to teach them. You want Sutton to teach them. And then you can maybe move on from one or two of those guys next season. And I see Jalen Virgil being kept on this team as well because you can't teach a mix of size and speed. So I think there's a whole bunch of really, really interesting things that came out of the preseason game. A lot of Broncos fans didn't like a guy named Key. I really like some of his play. I think he had a mistake. Mistakes happen. But I think by and large, he had some really great plays. And as long as he continues to progress, he should be making the 53, in my opinion. And I think Denver's defense is going to be a lot better than most people think. Because our young guys, they're not household names yet. But Chris Harris Jr. wasn't a household name either. And then he basically put up just stupid elite stats in like 2-3 seasons and then became one. And I think you're going to start seeing a few guys for the Denver Broncos, lesser known names, start to do something similar. So with that in mind, Alex, your thoughts on your Kansas City Chiefs?
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, first thing, just gonna go back. I feel Jack's pain on having to find it in an unorthodox manner. And then on top of that, they didn't really do a whole lot in terms of putting points on the board or winning. But at the same time, most of the key contributors and ones only play the first series. So with all that being said, there was some exciting components to the game, especially considering kind of the retooling they've been doing and with these past couple drafts and seeing some guys that haven't necessarily gotten a chance kind of rise to the occasion, so to speak, in this first week. First guy I wanted to mention and one that I've brought up before is Carson Steele. He was an undrafted free agent running back out of UCLA. And I know I mentioned him kind of bringing the skill set to make me think that, he might make the team as kind of the hybrid fullback, halfback that the Andy Reid offense hasn't had in KC, since Burton left. So really for the past 2 years, they haven't had a quote unquote fullback on the roster, but up to that point, they always did. And it was someone that was a decent blocker, kind of big bodied and still semi-athletic to be utilized in the passing game. And you got to like what you saw from Carson Steele in this game to kind of, bring that back to this offense. He was kind of the talk of Twitter with some of the runs he had. Had 4 carries for 29 yards, a touchdown, and averaged 7 yards. So he made some things happen. And in the passing game, I think he had a couple catches. I'm trying to make sure I didn't mess up his number. Yeah, just one catch. But yeah, I think you saw, certainly for an undrafted guy, you saw enough to, I think, give him more in this upcoming game and just see how that builds. But like I said, that's a person I know I am, and I'm sure most of the Chiefs kingdom is kind of keeping their eyes out for making the team and kind of playing a semi-crucial role. Because looking back on some of the other teams like Michael Burton, who's with the Broncos now, and Anthony Sherman, like 2 guys that were, they used a lot for run game, but also in kind of the misdirection, leak out pass plays that would pop, once a game for 30 yards. So, it's just exciting from the perspective of, adding kind of components that the offense hasn't had for the past couple of years, and, getting the deep threat options back, and potentially getting a more solidified fullback run blocker utility guy that brings a little bit more to the table. So that was certainly an exciting component of the game to see. The other side, flipping over to the defense, rookie Jaden Hicks, who's a 4th round safety they took.
He seems question on that guy, the fullback guy. So to your point, you had Burton forever, or for a while at least. Andy Reid has always found a way to leverage that fullback position. Do you think that, kind of like your rugby star there? Do you think that your rugby star there in the kickoff return game, etc., much like him being likely in the mix for some pretty big roles on your team, do you think that the new kickoff return rules favor Andy Reid now, saying, hey, fullback is now back on the table, and this dude has just shown that he can be that guy?
Yeah, I think it certainly, I think it definitely has given some credence to that. And just because you brought him up, LRZ was as one of the guys I kind of, was like kind of the downer of the game, so to speak, just because he kind of, I'd say, probably as expected for someone who's his first organized game, rugby star coming over. Like, he didn't really do anything too crazy to make me think, damn, like we might have something. And we'll see. Like, you got to give him some leeway, because like I said, that was the first time he's ever played an organized football game. So maybe the second time around, it just seemed in some parts that the moment was almost like too big. And there was just a lot going on, and it couldn't all click. That be because he had two carries for 1 yard, and then 1 catch for 3. So they tried to get him involved a little bit, and he at least had a catch and made some carries and didn't turn over the ball. But you would have liked to see a little bit more, especially considering what you saw from Carson Steele. Because honestly, I think they're both the type of body and player that would fit that role, and there's really only room for one of them. So, kind of from leaving this week 1 preseason game, I think it's kind of Carson Steele's spot to lose, and I think he's almost solidified to make the roster in that position. And LRZ's best chance now, barring some kind of dramatic turnaround, is to be the international player on the practice squad and have 1 full year of developing and learning and taking another crack at the 53 next year. But that's just, I mean, because one, like I said, averaged 7 yards a carry, and the other one averaged 0.5. You know, so
that Alex, that makes me think of a question. You know, like I just think, you know, going a couple years back, doing those flips in the middle, you know, kind of flipping the ball forward. And then they kind of got away from that and they went to Kelsey, but Kelsey always draws like double teams.
yes.
So you're going to clog that middle. My first thought was, wow, you know, you get a guy like Steele in there and Kelsey's on, you know, on the outside where he's going to pull another guy from the middle to help out on double covering him. That's just going to open some doors. That's kind of scary, actually.
No, and that you're right. And those, like, you know, shovel screens up the middle, they used to do, which they get effective sometimes with Kelsey, but I mean, before that, it was like Anthony Sherman and Michael Burton. That's like what they did, you know, once or twice a game, you know, come out, block, you know, or be like kind of the late check down, but then once or twice, you know, pop off on some kind of screen. So like I said, it's just exciting to see kind of that be brought back into the fold week 1. And I'm pumped to see how they continue to develop him, you know, into these next 2 games, because I think he's earned the right to only get more work.
And Jack, it's worse than that now, because the Chiefs haven't had a running back like Pacheco since Kareem Hunt.
Yeah.
And so I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news for the league here, but that ain't good. like that ain't good.
Rich are getting richer, baby. Rich getting richer.
Yeah, because you know, Kareem Hunt had that mixed bag ability of pass catching, as well as that physical run style that he ran with. Pacheco's not quite as good as catching the ball out of the backfield as Kareem Hunt was.
He runs harder.
But he runs harder than Kareem Hunt did. And if you throw a fullback in front of him, plus a Travis Kelce on the outside drawing, Jack, as you for sure pointed out, because that's what happens, is Kelsey's going to draw another one of those interior guys to try to block him. Because they have to.
Up, man.
They have to. Geez, that is not good.
Yeah.
And if they don't, Kelsey's going to feed for another 10 catches, 100 yards, touchdown a game.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, exciting to see how it all kind of played out in week 1. And I'm eager to see what week 2, you know, this game against the Lions is like. But yeah, that's the other positive.
That's going to be a tough game.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see. It's preseason. So
you're right.
It's preseason, and they just Jahmyr Gibbs just got hurt, so I think they might take a little step back on. You know, and I, you know, for that matter too, I don't expect Mahomes or, you know, Kelsey or really a lot of the ones to play any more than 1 series a game, you know, moving forward. But yeah, like I said, the other positive side was Jaden Hicks, the rookie safety, who he's been getting praise, you know, all preseason, and I think kind of got a unique opportunity because Justin Reed was hurt, so he kind of got to step into a little bit of a bigger role, you know, right out of the gate. But I mean, he was second on the team in tackles, flashed on defense and special teams. So I think, you know, it's great when you're getting that kind of looks and praise and production out of your 4th round pick, which only adds, you know, depth to the secondary. You know, that being said, I think, you know, and one more positive is I think we pretty much saw that the left tackle battle, if you want to call it that, is pretty much sewn up with Kingsley starting with the ones. And I think he actually, I think, played 1 or 2 more series, but I mean, his strength coming out of the draft was pass protection, and he flashed it. You know, had some pretty good reps in pass pro. And Wanye Morris has been dealing with an injury, which I think only helps solidify things. But he seems to be the guy, and you know, that's, I think, a positive thing. You know, being able to move into the start of the year with your starting left tackle being your 2nd round pick, who's 21, you know, only helps kind of retool the line with some of these potential hard decisions coming up with, you know, Tooney aging, having to re-sign Trey Smith and Creed, and giving Juwan Taylor a bunch of money. Like that's a good benefit when you can get starting production out of someone on a cheap rookie deal. So those are definitely the positives. There were certainly some negatives from the game. Just with
Please, let's hear some negatives. 2 Super Bowls, all these guys doing great. Yeah, let's hear some negatives.
Well, I mean, just in watching the 2s and 3s go, there's certainly, it's still an ongoing battle of who's going to step up to kind of help fill the void of losing L'Jarius Sneed. And I think it's more so filling the void of losing McDuffie as your slot guy. Because let's not forget, but Trent McDuffie was first team All-Pro corner that was predominantly, playing as the nickel slot defender. Tough to, I believe that McDuffie can step into the outside L'Jarius Sneed role and be just as productive. Sneed's a little unique in how physical he is at the line, but McDuffie kind of has that dog in him too a little bit. So excited to see, but he was basically the shining star of the corners in the game, and everyone else kind of was not much to write home about. And that's, definitely a negative and a sign of caution as, we're moving into the next 2 games. You hope that one of these guys maybe it picks it up a little bit, just so you roll into the season knowing, okay, like we got 3 guys that we're feeling good about, in a kind of a stable of rookies that we hope kind of catch things on and have certainly made flashes, but didn't really do anything, in this game to say, damn, like we've got our slot nickel guy and we're going to be able to move on and not be worried about, having the number 1 target locked up and things locked up everywhere else. So that's certainly a negative from the game. And then on top of that, just there's a clear drop off once the 1 offensive line left. And that's not necessarily like a total negative, but at the same time, like you want to know that you have solid depth because injuries are going to happen. Injuries are certainly going to happen on the offensive line. Most of those guys play injured week to week anyways, unless their body just shuts down on them. But you like to know that there's 1 or 2 guys that if something happens in the middle of the game can go in there and not be the problem that then the defense is like, hey, let's just attack this guy. And there was a lot of swinging gates, in the 2 and 3 group.
Quick question on that though for you. Cause obviously it's been no secret where we all see the Chiefs as the team that you must beat. Because they are the team to beat in the division, and that's just a fact.
In the league,
and the league, I probably the league wide too. You're providing all the tea for basically anyone league wide at this point.
Yep.
So, question on that: when the twos were in, as you just stated, when the twos were in for your offensive line. Were they going against your opponent's 1s or were they actually going against the number 2s? Because that is a relevant piece, right? So if you're saying, hey, like we were going against 1s and you're like, oh, and by the way, the guy we were going against is like an All-Pro, D end or something like that. And it's like, well, yeah, of course he looked like trash. Like he's your 2nd string or 3rd string at best. What did you expect? But if he looked like mediocre against like a top tier guy, well, that's not bad as a backup, lineman, right?
Yeah, no, it was a little blend of both. The Jaguars played their 1s, I think, through the first quarter for the most part. So they had 2 or 3 series, against a good chunk of their starters. And I think one component too is like they were obviously blocking for Carson Wentz and Ian Book and Chris Olodokun, who don't really bring the same pocket presence or awareness to, I think, help an offensive line out as Mahomes does. But at the same time, like you don't want to see the crazy amount of pressure that they were getting, with your second group out there. Like you expect 1 or 2 leaks, not a full blown outage, right? So it's that. I think that's just kind of the negative to take away is, and they have a lot of rookies that I think they drafted 2 interior linemen in this past draft, and I think brought in 3 or 4 more in undrafted free agents. So, that they're young, and you hope that it is kind of a stepping stone to progression and not step back. This upcoming week will tell a lot more, I think, just because it is a lot of young guys and a lot of first NFL game. I can only imagine how I would feel in that situation. We'll see kind of how it's kind of a TBD on those negatives until I see this next game, and I think that would be a kind of a clearer picture of where things are going depth wise and kind of some confidence in your depth. After we see this next game. Yeah, I was going to comment on what Dreamweaver said too about Rice.
Yeah. So we kind of spoke about him in the last few shows, though.
Yeah.
Right, which is it's a really interesting conundrum for the league to be put in, because on the one hand, there's almost certainly going to be something at some point, but on the other, you can't punish a guy when
until
until there's something to actually punish, right?
Right.
And so so Dreamweaver, first off, thanks for joining the show. Always love having fellow Bronco fans come in here and kind of participate. So, Alex, maybe just for the benefit of Dreamweaver, who I believe hasn't been here for some of our previous, we went in depth actually into the Ray Rice situation.
We did,
a little while back.
The Rice saga.
Yeah, but there's the conundrum here, which is, do you punish him for conduct detrimental to the league, and at which point he can basically be punished today or tomorrow, right? Or do you wait and say, no, we're not going to punish you for conduct detrimental to the league. We actually would prefer to punish you for the actual actions that you did, which were street racing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Felony,
the actual felony. Yeah. And it's my opinion that I believe the NFL has opted to go for the latter, which I think puts them in a challenging position, but probably the correct one as well, which is you're punishing the player for what they did wrong, not for you made me look bad.
Yeah.
And that's basically what you'd be doing otherwise. And I think that's fair. And I do think that there would be a much different approach. And this is awful to say, but if he had killed someone or done something.
Oh, for sure.
100%.
Yeah, I mean,
he would have been suspended that day, that morning. Yeah, exactly.
Within an hour.
The Chiefs would have released him straight up after that.
But I think a big part of it is just the fact that the legal criminal court side of things is still pending, and there doesn't seem to be. Granted, I've not gone and Googled, Rashee Rice criminal the status, but it there's not a whole lot of news coverage on it, which tells me things are pretty sealed up and being dragged out, which I would think is probably a strategy from Rice's legal team.
Yep.
From the mindset of he'll get to play this year.
Yep.
And
we'll
knowing, hey,
happens.
hey, I think it's either, because I don't know. They've certainly handed out suspensions in the middle of the year. So I don't know if it's let's see how far into the season we can get before we have to, resolve this. I mean, because he's going to end it in some kind of plea deal. He's not going to go to trial on this. It's just that doesn't seem like a reasonable thing to do. But it's like maybe they're taking the approach of let's see how long we can drag this into the season and then see if the league does something now or waits until next year. But then either way, you get to be a part of the chance, the run to try to three-peat and not, take a step back. And I think that's probably what's being done. Cause otherwise it wouldn't make any sense to let it linger on, and you'd want to get it resolved as quickly as possible. For the most part, that does happen unless they have a long criminal record, which he fortunately didn't. Outside of having some character issues and, issues with incidents at school, but I don't think, record wise, he had anything. The state's usually pretty good. Pretty good at working with someone when they're a first offender. So that's why I think it's being dragged on from the mindset of you're going to get to play to start the year. We'll see how far we can get and then see what the league does.
I think the part on that could really backfire for the Chiefs, though, is if that suspension does come in the middle of the season, which I doubt it will. But if it does, that could be a huge momentum killer for the Chiefs as a whole trying to three-peat. So it's like it's like the risk reward. It's like, yeah, we're gonna get him for the start of the year, and we're avoiding, quote unquote, avoiding punishment right now. But if that hammer comes down mid-season, that's gonna be a tough outside, sound that the Chiefs are gonna have to really fight off there.
And to segue, into this a little bit, but you also saw Hollywood Brown get hurt in this game, and now it's not anything overly serious, but he's expected to be out 4 to 6 weeks, and week 1's 3 weeks away. So, you're already looking at one person you brought in to be a key component hindered going into the season. You don't want to, have to deal with lingering injuries on top of a Rashee Rice suspension, in week 10. But yeah, it's weird because I feel like the league for the most part has been pretty quick about suspending people, outside of pending legal stuff or, things that I don't want to say like aren't overly serious, but are not like murder,
Right.
So,
yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting how this is played out with how aggressive it was covered, when it happened.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's time now for what I've been dreading this entire damn pod. Obviously, first big takeaway from the Chargers this preseason game was that quarterback room is absolutely trash behind Herbert.
Needs to be.
And if at any point, he needs to be fired off
into
the sun. Yeah, he needs to be beaten with a stick. It's bad, man. Like honestly, I don't know how he still has a roster spot because from 2 years ago we knew he was this bad. And it's like
last night, he's like, he must have some incriminating photos on some owner or one of his kids or something.
Dude, he has to. There's no way. Or he's just like Herbert's best friend, and he's like the Herbert gets one roster spot to like, all right, you can keep, and it's stick. He's like, I'm gonna take the one position.
Not Easton. He's mine. Leave Easton.
I mean, it's just like obviously the plan is Herbert the whole way, but God forbid if we ever have to go to anybody but Herbert for a game or two, I've saw nothing that gives me any sense of confidence that we can win the game or that the quarterback play would be okay enough to contend in a game.
Dreamweaver confirmed.
Yeah, he is a tool. He is a tool.
Put it on a shirt.
It's rough, man. Like
he's a tool.
I don't even know what he has no anticipation. Whatever. I'm not gonna stick on Easton.
The name like room,
yeah, exactly.
I
the
totally
quarterback
see
room
what you did there.
Oh man. Damn QB. Anyways, moving on to stick with some of the negative because the entire offense was just awful.
Negative.
Glad y'all caught it. To stick with the negative here, I mean, the offense was just absolutely. Are we hiring Kaepernick? No. Oh, we should, because honestly, he could probably do better than what Stick and the other guy out there, Luis or whatever that backup we signed was. I mean, there's just nothing. There's nothing positive to come from that room. If Herbert doesn't play, the season's chalked. Like that is just what it is. On top of that, the offense in its entirety was just awful. They had 9 first downs the entire game. We only had 12 offensive possessions. So it really wasn't like there was just no moving the ball. We couldn't run the ball, couldn't pass the ball, and obviously the biggest part of that was the QB. Like and I will say Seattle was playing their starters for I want to say a quarter and a half or at least that first half. And I mean, it showed. We had, I think, like 15 yards of total passing yards in the first half of the game. We had more incompletions than third downs converted. in the entire first half or something like that. So it was just awful. We didn't get a first down until our 7th drive of the game. And I just told you we had 12 drives in total. So, that just goes to show you how that first half went.
Well,
but
I'm glad you're still with us.
Yeah, tell me about it, man.
Hey, Robert, think of DB, man. Just flush it and move on to the next.
The only thing I was just thinking was like, this is preseason.
Yeah.
There's no Herbert.
Chill out.
This is preseason. Yep. I was like, just relax. We're not there yet. But to go on to some positives now about the offensive side of the ball.
Now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're gonna go east side now.
Hey, Robert, I have a question for you.
What's that, Rich?
What's the difference between Herbert and IHOP?
Oh God, what?
Well, IHOP has pancakes.
Yeah, what does Herbert have?
Well, they both hop, so that's all that matters.
God damn, man. Yeah, I'm about to hop myself into an early grave if Herbert isn't playing this year.
Let's hop over to the positives here.
Yeah. Why don't we stick to the positives here, Rich? All right, I'm really not trying to go. But yeah, some positives from the game. O-line looked relatively solid for the most part. Obviously, once the 2s and 3s started to come in a little bit, it was awful and really rough to say the least. But Alt looked really good in his debut in the first little bit of film we've seen him have. I thought he did really well against some speed off the edge. I know that was a big talking point. That was going to be a big struggle of his just because of that massive size and frame. It's really tough to beat those edge rushers. He did very good on it. What he didn't, and what I project he will certainly improve on, is the switch of power to speed from some of those D ends and D tackles. Having a little bit of trouble adjusting with that. Kind of fooled him a little bit on some of those plays, but he's a rookie. He'll learn. He only had like 40% of the snaps. So in the little time that he played, I was very happy and very impressed with what I saw. Definitely looked like somebody that's worth the number 5 overall pick. So very happy with him. As also Foster Sorrell looks like he's locked into a roster spot. He played a little bit of tackle last year. Looks like this season Ortiz has him more in a guard slot. So I expect to see him playing a little bit more of kind of like that swing guard, kind of like how Alex was talking about having some of those depth O lineman pieces. Could definitely see him somebody that comes in for some of those heavier sets, bringing in an extra lineman or so. So definitely looking for him to play better and play up to what he's been showing so far. Now moving from complete negativity, the defense played outstanding. I was so excited and so happy to see this defense play, to hold the Seahawks to 16 points. And it was really only 10 if we're being honest, because shocker, Easton Stick threw a pick in his own side of the field. So it was like a 17-yard little run, and even on that run there was a holding call. But whatever, I'm not gonna talk about penalties too much. It is the preseason, but there was a really egregious holding call on that touchdown run. But besides that, I mean, the defense was just all over the place. Minter is doing a great job sending these blitz DB linebacker packages. He sent, I want to say, it was 28 times he sent a blitz with a DB or a linebacker in that game. 7 pressures, 3 sacks on those 28 plays. So I definitely can't wait to see more of that, especially with our starters. I think Derwin's going to have a career year this year, especially rushing the quarterback, which is something he's shown he can do. And for whatever reason, Staley just never liked rushing him or blitzing him. So I definitely am excited to see how some of those different scheme changes will come into, elevate some of these players. And honestly, just the defense all day was playing very well. 7 tackles for loss, 7 pass breakups. So they were really just flying over the field, all over the field. And honestly, I was very excited and happy to see it. And my player of the game for the defense was Nick Neiman, who had 7 run stops, 2 pressures, had 1 of the sacks. I mean, he was a guy that was on the team last year and really didn't get too much playing time. But I think he is one of those guys that, and I was talking about this in past shows, that with this new regime and the new defensive mindset that we have in this building, he's one of the guys that I could definitely see take a big leap forward, make a name for himself this year. I think he was actually, I want to say he was on the Chiefs earlier in his career. I could totally be wrong with that.
I think his brother.
Oh, his brother. That's what it was. Yes. His brother is on the
There's two
Chiefs.
Niemans.
Yeah, there's two
Both
Niemans.
from Iowa.
Yep. So
Wow.
I was very happy with.
That's not
him.
saying much. There's a lot of football players from Iowa. That seems to be a theme
Especially
of
tight
sorts.
ends.
Yeah, that seems like a theme of sorts.
And Robert, I got some questions for you, man.
Yeah,
so
let's hear 'em.
I got two. So I heard like Derwin, they're like actually put him in some practices at wide receiver.
Yeah, so I was reading about that a little bit too. It seems like to be kind of something where it won't be like a every play. Obviously, it's definitely going to be something like a certain
Derwin
scenarios.
package.
Yeah, exactly.
It's for Madden.
Yep, the certain packages that they that they want to bring out there. But I mean, I could definitely see it. The dude has great instincts with the ball. I mean, he's got a wide receiver frame. If I'm being honest, he's got like that very almost kind of just a little bit of a slimmer AJ Brown, but kind of like same height, same muscular build. So I could definitely see him kind of going in like a I don't want to say like a discount, but like a Mike Williams type where, he goes up for those big, jump balls or, does something to try to catch, the defense lacking or, I feel like it's going to be not as big of a deal as they're making it seem. But I feel like there's definitely going to be some plays where, some creativity, something that is not just so basic. And this is what the Chargers have been doing for these past years, is just running basic ass offenses out there and expecting them to work. So I really think it'll help, but I'm not putting, a whole lot of stock into it. I'm not gonna be like, oh, there's wide receiver 3 or, there will be some positive plays. There's probably also gonna be some that don't work out at all. But, I'm curious and optimistic to see what he does with that.
Well, that'll be a lot of fun. And then my second question, so where are we at with the plantar fasciitis with Herbert?
So, I mean, we're kind of in the same spot. He's still in the walking boot. They did say it was going to be, up to 2 weeks in the boot. So I mean, they just have to play it extremely careful. They have to play it as careful as you possibly can. You're not going to have him. Obviously, he's not playing any preseason. You're not going to have him just running out there. They're going to slowly ease his way back into this.
He won't be running for a while.
I hope he's ready for week 1.
He won't be running for a while.
Running. Yes, yeah. Correct. Yeah, no, definitely. And that is the part that really upsets me, is because I was really hoping with this new offense we'd actually see some more mobility and some more running from Herbert, maybe a couple of QB design runs. That's probably not going to happen anymore, especially not after this injury. If we are going to see it, it'll be if we get far enough down into the season and we're still contending for a playoff spot. So it sucks, but at the end of the day, that's the franchise. So you're not going to do anything to even remotely risk, because as we saw with that QB room behind him, if he's not on the field, there is zero chance that the Chargers are ever going to win a game. Yeah.
So I got a tying off, I guess, what Jack just said there, and certainly jumping off of that last comment of yours, which is the typical narrative that has been coming with regards to your hiring of Harbaugh as your coach. And I'm going to ask the Bolt Bros to pay attention to this last bit of the podcast. I'm curious as to their thoughts on this as well, which is Harbaugh has a propensity to take over a team and kind of flip the script a little bit, where he's typically taken over a team and literally the next season they are
better than they were.
Playoff contenders, or even better than that in many respects. Now, if with what we've seen thus far from your Chargers, you saw a poor offense, which I think is a fair comment to make.
Oh, absolutely. You're being generous.
Yeah. And some challenges at depth in the offensive side of the ball, as well as an anemic backup quarterback room. So all of that factored in, and given the fact that you ain't winning points by your defensive alone, because your defense isn't that good. They're good. They're not that good.
Correct.
So with that in mind, do you think that this is probably better for Chargers fans to start slow playing their expectations before they start, having some challenges?
Well, I definitely think, first of all, expectations should have never been higher than, what did I say our ceiling was? 12 wins. That's gone. That's out of the question now. That's, ceiling is assuming everybody's healthy and everything goes according to plan. That's out of the window now because your most important player's hurt and he's starting off the season hurt. And as we discussed before, the worst thing you could have for your QB is to go into the season with an injury. It probably means he's going to get injured at some point during the season again, especially with an injury like plantar fasciitis. And it's one of the most delicate injuries. Nobody really knows how or why it gets injured. It just does. And so now, it's ultimately going to be a pain threshold thing for him. They're obviously going to shoot him up before every game. How well is he going to, handle
drugs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
His house.
Hit me.
So, so it's definitely going to be something to watch. But to go back to your question, Rich, I definitely think Charger fans should not do not heighten your expectations. This season is going to be a very telling season. I'll say that because we've had a lot of wishy-washy kind of, we don't know like what is really happening with this team. One week they look like they could be contenders. The next week they look like bottom feeders. So I feel like we will do a better job of playing our consistent game of football where we will not be so one week we're this, the other week we're not. We're going to be a very, our team is going to have an identity finally. And regardless if we win or lose, this team is going to play to its strengths. This team is going to play to Harbaugh's coaching. And I think that in and of itself will produce, like, the wins will come. If this team just plays Harbaugh's game and they play his style of football, the wins will come. It will not be something where Charger fans are going into every week like, oh God, are we going to choke it away? How are we going to lose it this week? I feel I got
one last question for you, Robert,
Yeah.
before I throw to Alex, though. And I wanted to interject there because that's exactly it's another lead in to exactly where my next question was. So I think it's perfect, which is, do you think Harbaugh is going to adjust his offense to fit the deficiencies that currently exist?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you think that he would rather play his offense to expose the deficiencies on the roster to better showcase what he needs to replace or fix for next offseason? Basically, is this a I don't want to call it throw in the towel moment, but is this a moment where he thinks that he needs to just identify the problems and then kind of say, and there's your issue, like, by showing it on the field? Or
Right.
Is it something where he says, no, I know I have problems, but we're going to try to hide it, like, for sure?
I feel like this is going to be kind of sounding like a not really answering your question, but I feel like it's going to be a little bit of both. And I truly do think it's going to be a little bit of both because I don't think Harbaugh is the type to just be like, oh, well, that's it. Throw in the towel. We're done. Like, that is not his mentality at all. This dude is a fighter. He wants to scratch and claw for every win. So I feel like he is, although he is, going to be tested very early on now with these injuries and given the state of the team now, I feel like this is where he's going to thrive, even just more so of now there's every reason to doubt the Chargers, right? Herbert's, not healthy going into the season. The QB play behind him look awful. So it's almost now into the theory of, is it Herbert or bust? Even though everybody kind of already knew that it really is Herbert or bust. But I feel like we're going to see a little bit of, okay, I need to adjust a little bit, obviously given the injuries, and also a little bit of, I'm a damn good coach. I believe in what I'm preaching. I have a vision for this team, and we're gonna go through with it. So I know I didn't really answer your question, but I really do feel like it'll be a
Let me
little bit
answer
of
your
both.
question with another
Yeah,
question.
with
Yeah.
another question. But I
So-
mean, because it's tough, right? Like I don't think Harbaugh, like he's definitely not the type to just be like, well, it's time to just draw it all back in.
Sure.
Like, don't want to show what we're doing. Like, no, he's gonna try to win every week, no matter what. But I also think he is realistic in the sense of like, okay, the offense has definitely taken a hit now with Herbert in this injury. We gotta maybe adjust a few things, and maybe that's kind of like the silver lining in Herbert getting injured this quote unquote early in training camp or preseason is that you now have time to make those adjustments going into the season. So now it's not like, this isn't the week before where it's like, oh my God, what are we going to do? We had an entire offseason plan on the offense and now that's out the window. Now he has a chance to, kind of work a little bit, see what he has. I'm bringing up the fullback Jordan McFadden, because we ended up cutting the Michigan fullback, Ben Mason. I feel like, there's going to be kind of like how Alex said with his fullback, there's going to be some of those.
Get on the bus. Where's your khakis?
You're not wrong, Cool Kev, and I guarantee you Joe Alt is all for it because him and Harbaugh are kind of like two and the same in that regard. But yeah, I definitely feel like Harbaugh he knows what he has with the injuries and everything. And I feel like it's not going to affect him too much, given where the offense is.
So, Alex, before we close out the show, is there any kind of comments or questions you have with regards to the Chargers game? Kind of add some additional elements here, and then we will sign off and look forward to seeing the progression from all of our teams in the second preseason game. And that will most definitely be what we're going to be covering next show. In terms of the week 2, as well as a week ahead look at preseason week 3. And guys, I don't think you understand. Like we're talking short order.
We're so close.
Like short order cut down to 53 and a 53-man roster projection. So, I mean, we're on autopilot at this point when it comes to the topics that we are going to be bringing up with everyone here. So, Alex, over to you, and then we'll close up the show.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't really have any comments about the game itself because I didn't watch it. And also seeing the final score, it doesn't seem like I missed much.
You did
from a Chargers perspective. I was on Coach's show last night and we kind of talked about, we kind of did it, ironically, an AFC West kind of recap or grading of how the offseason went and leading into this year or this coming season. But it's really just the biggest thing is and I think is Herbert's health is going to just be the deciding factor of how this season goes or not. Because honestly, I think that the Chargers have made moves to realize like we needed to rebuild our core. We think we hired the guy to do that. Now let's see how quickly he does it, whether it's 1 year or 2 years. But I ultimately think they're still one off season away from taking the crown from the Chiefs or being in the
contending
legitimate conversation to do that. That being said, I do agree that if Herbert is healthy, I mean, your ceiling could be 12 wins because you look at last year, I mean,
we had 5 wins with the worst.
You think, as I said last night, like you think you could probably look back to 2 or 3 losses that you could point to something Staley decided to do that ultimately led to it. So you got to think Harbaugh is not the type of guy to put the team in that position in the first place or make that decision the same way that Staley did. So, by the process of elimination, you're taking away some negative components from last year. Now it's just seeing how quickly did he retool this roster by, adding more people to the room rather than one guy. And did he truly get enough people to totally shift the culture now, or is it going to take one more off season? It's certainly going to take one more if Herbert's not healthy.
Yeah.
And I think that's, the ultimate, like Coach said, it's a matter of how long does this foot thing linger? Not, is he ever going to be healthy?
Oh, yeah. I will say, and very, very quickly before we end the show, Rich, I do want to say one thing that gives me optimism of Harbaugh and how he's going to be able to run this team is he didn't just come into the team and like, all right, everybody out, this is my team now. Like everybody I want is coming in. Like, no, he took a genuine good look around, is like, what talent is already here? What pieces to my puzzle are already a part of this team that I don't need to go out and get? And the biggest one, and what I feel like will be a huge factor in this year for us in our success, is the special teams. And with Ryan Ficken, the special teams coordinator, because the special teams has been balling out the last 2 or 3 years, and it's been probably the only consistent part, which is hilarious to say to me as a Charger fan, because we've never had consistent special teams, but it has probably been the only consistent part over the last 3 years and during the Staley era. And so now Harbaugh recognizing, like, okay, obviously it wasn't all bad. Let me take the good. Let me stick with Ficken. Let him do his thing. And now with this new kickoff, I really am excited for this team. I'm genuinely excited to see what they're going to do. And it's going to be a fun season regardless, as long as Herbert's healthy.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we're going to stick to our guns here, and we're going to hop on off the podcast, just like Herbert's doing tonight at home.
I did 1 minute, Rich, just a second, since we got a little more people. I am going to shamelessly re-announce, the Lightning Fast Fantasy Podcast. We're coming back in a couple weeks. But as I said at the start, we are trying to start up a fantasy league that will be implemented into the show, throughout the season. And, Coach and I are putting up our own money for the winner. Winner gets $500. So if any of you guys are interested, my Twitter's right here. Our lockdown defense, we're trying to get 12 to 14 people that want to chop fantasy and win some of my money. So there we go.
It's an interesting one, and it'll be very, very interesting to see how things stack up in the league and kind of where people draft. I have sadly never been that great at drafting in fantasy because of just the way that my mind works.
You gotta watch the show, man.
You and John Elway got that in common. Not great at drafting.
That's true.
You're a true Denver fan.
Yeah, that's true. Although, funnily enough, I've never drafted well, but I've always got like the bottom portion of my roster has always overproduced. like you know what I mean? Like it's hilarious. It's hilarious. So I got Josh Allen in the year I drafted him in my fantasy. He killed it.
Was that his one like MVP?
Yeah. And then the middle part of my roster, who like the wide routes and stuff, like were crap. And then like the rando running backs and tight ends that I had that were like middling of the pack, I just got all the right guys and they killed it.
Yep, that's how it goes.
I finished like third ultimately, but
that
like
sounds
the guys,
like fantasy.
Yeah. So it's brutal. But anyways, great show tonight. We're gonna go right into preseason week 2. We're gonna cover all the things about all our teams, and talk about a lot of the bottom portion of our roster, which I think is really what's going to come out of the second preseason game. If you guys have any questions, hit us up on Twitter down here below. If you have any other questions, you can reach out to us at Wild Wild West Pod on X or Twitter. And until next week, guys, where the West Side is the best side. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street, bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast racking up the flight miles. So high, I might never come down, so what, this is my lifestyle.